Welcome to Concrete Block, your go-to source for in-depth analysis and discussion of current events from around the world. I'm your host, Walter, and we're glad you're joining us today. We're starting off with a story that's been making waves in international trade and diplomacy. The United States and India are engaged in high-stakes negotiations over trade policies, with India facing potential economic consequences if an agreement isn't reached. At the heart of the issue is the Trump administration's push for India to open up its markets to more American goods, while India is seeking to protect its own domestic industries. Now, let's take a closer look at the situation. India has been a key player in the global economy, with a growing middle class and a rapidly expanding consumer market. However, the country has also been facing challenges related to trade deficits and intellectual property protection. The U.S., on the other hand, has been seeking to reduce its own trade deficit with India, which has been a major point of contention between the two nations. The Indian government, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been trying to balance the need to open up its markets with the need to protect its domestic industries. The country has imposed tariffs on certain American goods, such as agricultural products and electronics, in an effort to level the playing field. However, the U.S. has responded with its own set of tariffs, which has led to a trade war between the two nations. The situation is complex, with multiple stakeholders and interests at play. While some argue that a trade deal between the U.S. and India could be a major boost to both economies, others are concerned about the potential impact on domestic industries and workers. We'll continue to follow this story and provide updates as more information becomes available. It's a developing situation that has significant implications for global trade and diplomacy. In other news from the region, Bangladesh's interim government has been making headlines with its recent visit to China, where several agreements were signed related to culture and economics. The trip has raised eyebrows in India, which has been watching developments in Bangladesh closely since the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina last year. We'll also be keeping an eye on the situation in Nepal, where pro-monarchy protests turned violent last week, resulting in 2 deaths and dozens of injuries. The incident highlights the ongoing tensions and instability in the region, and we'll be providing more analysis and context as the situation develops. That's all for now. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're diving into the middle segment of today's show, where we explore some of the most pressing issues affecting our world. Today, we're looking at a complex and multifaceted topic that has significant implications for international trade and diplomacy. As we've been following the developments in the trade relationship between Canada and the U.S., it's clear that the situation is becoming increasingly complicated. With the recent announcement of retaliatory tariffs by the Canadian government, many are wondering what this means for the future of trade between the two nations. To break it down, let's take a look at the different approaches being proposed by various parties. The Liberal government has outlined a plan to impose $155 billion in retaliatory tariffs against the U.S., while the Conservative Party is planning to use revenue from tariffs to cut taxes and provide relief to those most impacted. Meanwhile, the NDP is calling for dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs and a 100% tariff on certain goods. It's also worth noting that some economists are cautioning against a tit-for-tat approach, suggesting that it could ultimately harm Canadian businesses and consumers. Instead, they recommend focusing on addressing the underlying issues and finding mutually beneficial solutions. As we consider these different perspectives, it's essential to remember that international trade is a complex issue with many moving parts. While retaliatory tariffs may seem like an attractive option in the short term, it's crucial to think about the long-term consequences and how they may impact our economy and relationships with other countries. Ultimately, finding a solution will require careful consideration, diplomacy, and a willingness to work together. As we continue to follow this story, we'll be keeping a close eye on developments and bringing you updates and analysis. Stay tuned for our final story of the day. right here on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're wrapping up today's show with a look at the latest news from the world of electric vehicles. Tesla, the pioneering EV manufacturer, has just released its production and sales numbers for the first quarter of 2025, and the results are quite striking. According to the company's reports, Tesla produced 362,615 vehicles in Q1, which represents a 16.3% decrease from the same period last year. The drop in sales was slightly less severe, with the company delivering 336,681 EVs, a 12.9% decline compared to Q1 24. Breaking down the numbers further, we see that the Models 3 and Y, which make up the bulk of Tesla's business, saw a 16.2% reduction in production and a 12.4% decline in sales. The older models S and X, as well as the Cybertruck, fared even worse, with production falling by 18.3% and sales plummeting by 24.3%. Now, it's worth noting that Tesla's energy storage business did show some growth, with the company deploying 10.4 GWh of energy storage products in Q1. However, this segment still contributes a relatively small fraction to the company's overall revenue. So, what's behind this slump in sales? Well, analysts point to several factors, including increased competition in the EV market, as well as growing concerns about Tesla's CEO Elon Musk's political activities. Protests at Tesla stores and vandalism of the company's vehicles have become more frequent, both in the US and abroad. It's also worth noting that Tesla's profit margin has been declining, with the company reporting a margin of just 6.2% in Q4 2024. This is significantly lower than the industry average, and it will be interesting to see how the company addresses this issue in its upcoming financial reports. Overall, these numbers paint a complex picture for Tesla, and it's clear that the company faces significant challenges in the coming months. However, it's also worth noting that Tesla investors seem to be taking the news in stride, with the company's stock price holding steady despite the disappointing sales numbers. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay informed.